Hey, my name is Dirty Garden Tool, also known as DGT, and this is my look into Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. I wanted to talk about these two films in one video because although it's not the same series, they do in fact take place in the same universe and speak largely about one thing: grief, and how to, or rather, how not to, cope with it. There's interesting things in how these movies reflect or reverse roles and situations. In Talk to Me, it is the protagonist, Mia, whose grief over her mother's death becomes the catalyst of the story. In Bring Her Back, it's Laura, the antagonist, mourning her daughter's death, which drives the movie forward. Regardless, however, these are both cautionary tales of how grief can turn over and harm others, even if unintentional. Let's start with Mia. She is someone who's not only struggling with the loss of her mother, Ria, but also loneliness. Her relationship with her father is strained, shown by the fact that one is usually out of focus while the other one is speaking, and by her refusing to open up to him while also ignoring his phone calls. She holds on to emotions, such as her feelings towards Daniel, her ex-boyfriend from 3 years prior, who's dating her friend Jade. This is evident through Mia's jealousy of them holding hands, her also holding on to a stereo in which they've carved their initials in. Although maybe it's expensive to replace a stereo, but it's clearly shown in her dream sequence with him that there is still something there for her. That same dream morphed nightmare, a recollection of her mother's death, in which it then foreshadows Mia's death by having Mia take her mother's place, both dying due to overdose, though Mia is a lot more supernatural in nature. Speaking of nightmares, she also mentions one that's reoccurring, where she cannot see her reflection in the mirror as if she wasn't there, perhaps a metaphor for not being able to recognize herself. There is a lot of symbolism in this movie, whether it's color related through its usage of warmer colors in Jade's house compared to the desaturated darkness that is her home. Not to mention the color yellow meant to represent Mia, whether it's the clothes and apparel that she wears, or the scissors that she wields, or even wilting flowers. There's a loudness in the color yellow, a yell for attention, someone seeking recognition only for her to feel heard through the hand in which a yellow candle is used. There's also a tiny snippet where yellow mealworms are underwater being consumed by axolotls, which I could only assume to be a symbol of the grief eating away at Mia. I also feel like water has more of a negative connotation, such as the sound of water drowning out her father and an officer speaking, two authority figures who may have been trying to help her out. The mention of rain in her mom's parting letter. There's also a moment where spirits take over Riley as he's being washed and tainting the water with his blood, or even how the spirits who have been lying to Mia are waterlogged and have an accompanying sound to them. There's also the spirits imitating her mother, progressively becoming more and more drenched, losing the facade by the end, though Mia is too far gone to recognize. We'll talk more about water when we get to Bring Her Back. What sets Mia apart from Laura is that she doesn't have bad intentions. The harm done to Riley is something unintended brought on by her grief, something that is clearly negatively impacting her decision making, which is why Riley ends up. But it's something she seeks to fix, which gets to the crux of Talk to Me's approach to grief and suffering. In the beginning, there's a kangaroo laying in the road, suffering with no one around to help. Mia decides to leave it alone, unwilling to put it out of its suffering, thinking that someone else will come by and help it, or do it themselves. Riley is the second kangaroo. Mia, through the influence of the spirits, has come to the conclusion that it is better to end things rather than allow one to suffer through the hardships that they face. This is clearly when Mia is no longer good, even if her intentions are, that being saving Riley from eternal suffering. But that's the thing. Suffering isn't eternal. There is a character named Cole, seen in the cold open, being stabbed by his brother Ducat, the previous owner of the hand. He was asked, what can they do to help Riley's condition? And Cole's response was essentially, give it time. That spirits, which can serve as a metaphor for our worst emotions, thoughts, and feelings, will get weaker over time and come to pass. The end of the movie proves this to be true, where you can see that Riley eventually recovers from the condition that he was suffering from earlier. I've thought a lot about the hand in Talk to Me, how it serves as a vehicle or metaphor for drug usage, and how people may abuse these things in an attempt to cope with what they're going through, how it's a symbol of connection, how you let someone in, and how people or beings with ulterior motives may take your moments of vulnerability and weaponize them, how one should be careful with who they open up to and who they make connections with. To drive this point in a bit further, the soundtrack on the night where everyone is partying is called Le Monde. Mia is possessed by a spirit who sings the song that the soundtrack is sampling, Le Foule by Edith Piaf, a French song about making connections with a man before it is torn away, and she cries but the crowd around her can't hear her because they're having too much fun and laughing, which reflects exactly what's going on in this very party. To add another layer, Edith Piaf was actually influenced by a Spanish song named Que nadie sepa mi sufrir, which translates to Let no one know my suffering. This is the true tragedy of Mia, the third kangaroo. She ends up dying much like the first. Often left alone or refusing to connect with her father, she doesn't have the same support system as Riley, and therefore turns to the hand for help and subsequently succumbs to the spirits and darker thoughts. Her recurring nightmare becoming true, she ends up being ignored by everyone around her, looking into a mirror to find it vacant because she is no longer there. And I know that's kind of depressing, but at least we can move on to bring her back. And okay, unlike Talk to Me, this film is a lot less fun. And by that, I don't mean that it's a bad movie necessarily. I mean that it's an extremely bleak one that'll make you feel kind of empty, unsatisfied, and upset. A film of grief and abuse. It observes grief primarily through Laura with the loss of her daughter, Kathy. Much like Mia, she's incapable of moving past her grief. This is hinted at early with her having a pet dog that has been taxidermized, or when she explains to Andy how she never coped with her daughter's death, that she feels like she would have been abandoning her daughter if she left her in the cemetery, a hint towards the much more gruesome reveal that she took her daughter's corpse and left it in a freezer for later use. So, what sets Laura apart from Mia? Well, to start, she's someone who's much older, more mature, perceived well by her peers, but most importantly, like I've mentioned before, it's that the harm she brings around her is intentional. From the beginning of the movie, Laura has been manipulating the protagonist, Andy and Piper, so that she could complete the ritual and bring back her daughter from the dead. And I do mean from the very beginning. She chose Piper to be the replacement for Kathy. She did her research on Andy, knowing that he hit Piper once when he was 8 years old, and used that to try to separate them. Kept a tab on the weather for how quickly the pool should fill up. I mean, she even straight up admits to Andy that she killed his father in the shower.
You don't think it's because your dad died in the shower and I killed him?
Some people assume that this is to mess with Andy, but given the state of Ollie, someone will look into later, and how unstable her control over him is, especially in such a short amount of time, plus the dependency on the weather, I do feel like she's telling the truth and is being extremely methodical in this process. I do believe, however, that she is not naturally a manipulative person, nor a sadistic one. I think this is more so showing off how grief can make someone into the worst possible version of themselves, which makes her somewhat tragic. I only say somewhat because of what she does to Andy. From the moment he arrives, she tries to push him out of the picture, quite literally, but also through mental abuse, whether it's weaponizing his moments of vulnerability, drugging him, isolating him while in the hospital, falsely trying to make him out as an abuser, pouring her own piss on him to make him think that he's wetting himself, and, drowning him after hitting him with a car. It's hard to watch for me personally, because Andy had already faced a physical abusive past with his dad just to end up in foster care and getting mentally abused and then killed unceremoniously with nothing to show off for it. There is no growth from anyone. I want to dive a bit more into Andy for a moment. He is one of the reasons that I think water has a much more insidious or negative connotation in this universe. He has a lot of trauma related to showers, whether it's the fact that he found his father's corpse in the shower, or more importantly, the fact that his father would use the sound of a shower to hide his physical abuse towards Andy from Piper. He is so traumatized that he'd rather wash himself from the spigot in the backyard. There's also the previously mentioned drowning by Laura, the fact that Kathy also died by drowning. Even the spirits of her father warn Andy of the rain. On top of that, the pool building up more rainwater over time, which can be seen as a buildup of negative emotions that will eventually lead to Laura trying to drown Piper in said pool. Moving back to Laura, where as Mia is represented by the color yellow, Laura is represented by a shape, the circle. It can represent many things, whether it's cycles of life and death, where one can come back through the sacrifice of another, or her inability to escape her cycle of emotions, shown by her literally dying in a circle, embracing her daughter's corpse. There's also a point in the story where it circles in on itself, with Piper finding Andy's body in the shower, similar to how she found their father in the beginning of the film. The circle could also be interpreted as her need and attempt to control others, such as Ollie, through the physical use of a painted circle or drawing a circle to soothe the being in him, which is what I would argue to be the most important part of this analysis. Ollie as the personification of grief and how Laura copes with it, how it's something that's weird or awkward to talk about or address, but as time goes on, it grows to be uglier, disgusting even, and consuming everything around her, even eating at her, a much more literal way of communicating how these feelings can and will sometimes fester away and eat at you. Another way you can see this is how grief can be a corrupting force, seeing how Ollie is actually an abducted child named Connor Bird, robbed of his innocence, much how Laura has lost hers in this ordeal. How is Ollie a representation of her coping mechanism? Well, it's explained in the ritual, through mimicry. The movie doesn't explain it much at all, only giving glimpses of how the ritual works, and only really showing us the latter half of it as well, since we never see how Connor ended up in the state that he's in. Now, this next bit is more theory and my personal interpretation, but before giving it, I want to go over the steps of the ritual. First, you must use the sacrifice to mimic the death of the person you're trying to bring back. Second, the angel has to consume the body of the person you're trying to bring back enough to hold the soul, and then it finally purges the soul into the sacrifice, and you got yourself a resurrected loved one. That's the thing to me, though. My theory is that what has been brought back is not the loved one, but rather the angel mimicking the deceased. I only think this because I see this as some sort of Faustian bargain. There's likely something the angel wants to get out of this interaction, which is to consume and find a vessel to stay in. The only reason I believe this to be true, however, is that throughout the movie, Ollie eats multiple things. Junkman, Laura's cat, Andy, and Andy's dad. Once doing so, Ollie has been shown the ability to mimic that which he consumes. However, he also mimics Laura, even though she's still alive at the time and only consumes a portion of her. So it could be that the entire ritual is that the angel consumes the soul and then mimics them in the new vessel instead of a resurrection. But that's just a theory that I have. The only issue I have with this theory is the fact that Ollie makes Andy's dad appear, which goes far beyond mimicking, but I'm getting off track. Back to the point. Laura does use mimicry to cope. A hollow surface level attempt of mending things, like the taxidermy of her dog, a stuffed effigy of something she once held dear. That's what Piper is as well. Someone similar to her daughter, both being hard of seeing. She even tries to dress Piper up in Kathy's clothes and have her live in the room that belonged to Kathy. She even gives her the option to live with her instead of having to go through with the ritual, showing that she would have been willing to settle with having a replacement for a daughter. In the end, however, she finds herself incapable of going through with the ritual. Whether it's a lack of conviction, maternal instincts, Piper calling her mom, fulfilling Laura's wish of being called that one final time, or that she sees a part of Kathy in her. Regardless, she lets Piper go, causing the clothes representing Kathy to come off of Piper, a metaphor of how Piper could never truly be her daughter. Laura then decides to end it all, realizing that she is truly incapable of moving past this, taking her daughter's corpse into the pool so she can die by her side. When watching this, me and my friends were kind of annoyed. We all had speculations of what could have happened, such as Andy becoming the host of Kathy's, or Piper becoming the host of Andy's soul since he was drowned and then consumed by Ollie. But there is no grand payoff nor spectacle. The movie ends in this extremely somber note, with everyone, for the most part, being left off worse. I can understand that not every movie needs to have a grand crescendo nor a happy ending, so I'm not really bothered by it. It's just more so not my cup of tea. But this is why the movie is definitely more divisive. There is no lesson that you can easily glean off of this film, only showing you really a tragic tale of a mother consumed by her grief and nothing more. If I were to rate these films, I'd give Talk to Me 4 solid handshakes out of 5. It's a more digestible movie that I feel like works for a wider audience, even for those who aren't too into the supernatural. And it is overall fun, in my opinion at least. As for Bring Her Back, I think it is a very beautiful movie, but one that confronts its watchers with a very uncomfortable topic, while also leaving you worse off by the end. Again, I really like this movie and the motifs in it, but I'd have to give it 3.5
cylinder
going into 5.
Square hole.
At least if I'm recommending it to a more general, broader audience. Again, thanks for everyone who watched. If you have a movie or piece of media that you want to suggest, leave a comment and I'll look into it. Until next time, stay safe and take it easy.